Make sure everything is cleaned up.
As I was having tea with Catherine, Bob said that before he left.
What's with that attitude?
It's okay.
No, it's not.
Catherine got mad at me for accepting Bob's attitude as normal, and she decided to help me clean.
Bob's room is a mess.
His room was cluttered. While we were tidying up, we chatted and laughed. Then, Catherine reached for something. Oh, that's... I tried to stop her from opening the drawer without his permission. But before I could, I heard Catherine's surprised voice.
What is this? What?
What happened? No way. Looking at the photo in Catherine's hand, I was speechless. A happy family photo and a completed divorce application. That turned me off. Catherine, will you help me?
Of course.
With a strong ally by my side, I began preparing to fight. First, we had to get rid of some things. With that thought, I rolled up my sleeves. My name is Emma Smith. I'm a 35-year-old housewife. I've been married to Bob for 5 years now, without any children. Despite that, we had a peaceful and loving marriage. Bob and I met through a mutual friend, sort of like a blind date. We were both tired of passionate relationships, as we had just broken up with our previous partners. While Bob and I shared similar values, the excitement I felt with my ex-boyfriend wasn't there. However, considering it was the right age for marriage, I thought this must be fate and decided to marry Bob. Bob seemed to have made his decision for similar reasons, so we never discussed it. Since we shared the same values, we didn't face any major issues with dividing household responsibilities or habits, and I took care of the housework, and Bob handled his job, each of us managing our duties well. While those around me were getting married for love, and I often heard them gush about it, I could genuinely say I'm happy from the bottom of my heart each time, indicating that my married life was going smoothly. But then our calm life was suddenly disrupted. It happened when Bob came home drunk one night, although he rarely drank. He returned at 3 a.m., and I greeted him at the entrance. Hi there, you're late. It should have been a normal exchange, but Bob was acting strangely that day.
Shut up! It's none of your business when I come back.
What? As I stood there, confused, Bob started using rough language, his breath reeking of alcohol.
The whole point of marrying you was to make you do the housework. Don't bother me. You're just a maid.
What? Hearing Bob's true feelings for the first time left me in shock. Although we hadn't gone through a romantic process, I believe Bob loved me, and I loved him.
I should have married someone younger and bragged about it more.
That's awful.
Awful? I should be the one saying that.
Bob then threw those words at me and quickly went to his study, starting to snore on the makeshift bed. I cried at the entrance, listening to Bob's voice. All this time, my marriage life was an illusion. It's going to be tough from here on. Despite thinking this, Bob was back to his usual self the next morning.
Good morning. What time did I come back last night? Man, I was really pushed to drink.
What?
Something wrong?
Oh, no. Good morning. I was puzzled by Bob's behavior, as if nothing had happened. Seeing me worried, Bob kept talking.
What's up? You're acting weird today.
No, it's nothing.
It can't be nothing. We're married. We should be able to talk about anything.
Well, if you insist. Unable to hold back, I told him about last night. The expression gradually faded from his face, and the moment I finished talking, his attitude changed drastically.
So, you got me.
That's terrible.
You must have decided to marry me based on my conditions, right?
I married you because our values aligned.
Yeah, spare me that.
Bob cut me off and slumped into a chair. Then he began to give orders with a gesture of his chin.
Food, make it quick.
Food.
Who do you think is providing for this living? Work properly, maid.
I found myself feeling scared of Bob, as he had completely changed his attitude. From then on, Bob treated me entirely as a maid.
Hey, food.
Bob stopped calling me by my name, and although I was initially sad, I gradually became emotionless.
Hey, is the bath ready?
Oh, it's ready.
Then say so quicker. You're so slow.
I'm sorry. Before I knew it, I started using formal language with Bob, and he took it as a matter of course. A few months into this life, Bob spoke up during dinner.
I'm going on a business trip for a month, starting tomorrow. Get ready.
A business trip?
You got a problem with that?
No, I understand. Bob works as a civil servant. I wondered if he really had business trips. But feeling intimidated by Bob, who grumbled about his dinner, I didn't dare to confirm. At night, while preparing for the trip, Bob went to sleep at his usual time. How did things end up like this? I cried alone.
Don't slack on the housework.
Yes. Without a "see you later." That's all Bob said before leaving. I replied and saw him off. The moment I was alone, I felt a sudden release of tension throughout my body. A month alone, huh? I genuinely felt relieved to escape from the tense life I had been living for a while. At the same time, thinking about continuing this life for years to come made me feel a bit down. Well, no use worrying about it. I've got to enjoy this month anyway. I deliberately said out loud to lift my spirits. Then, using my own savings, I enjoyed meals out with friends and reading books at leisure, savoring my alone time. During this period, I thought a lot about the future and decided to start moving towards divorce. The first step was to find a job. However, Bob would probably not be happy about me working. After much consideration, I decided to try a part-time data entry job that I could do from home. Since I had worked as an office clerk before getting married, I had no problems handling a computer. Gradually, I took on more tasks and increased my income. Just as I was getting used to this new lifestyle, Bob came back home after a month.
Did you do the housework properly?
Yes.
I wonder about that.
Despite it being a long time since we'd seen each other, Bob looked at me with annoyance. Of course, there was no souvenir. I didn't even feel like complaining.
Well, it's barely acceptable, I guess.
Bob inspected the house and said so. I felt my emotions draining away again. As long as Bob is around, I'm an emotionless robot. I have to get a divorce. After that, Bob went on several long business trips. Each time, I had to pack and then unpack his bags. The only saving grace was that the hotels Bob stayed at did his laundry, so there was hardly any laundry when he came back home. However, I really disliked the smell of the sweet, sticky fabric softener on his clothes. I couldn't count how many times it made me choke. But complaining about it to Bob would only make him angry. So I always wore a mask while putting his clothes away. One day, my sil, Catherine, came to visit our house. Unlike me, Catherine is active, but since we are the same age, we've been calling each other by our first names and have been close since the beginning of my marriage. I served Catherine some cake and tea I had made, and we sat down. After taking a bite, Catherine smiled.
Your cake is always really delicious. Bob is so lucky.
Is he, though?
What's wrong? Did something happen?
No, it's nothing. As I forced a smile, Catherine looked at me suspiciously. I diverted the conversation by offering her more cake. How about you, Catherine?
Oh, yeah? You know what? He left his sarks lying around again.
Isn't that cute?
Not cute at all.
Catherine was talking about her recently married husband, Noah. Apparently, he was a familiar face in the neighborhood, and being 10 years younger than Catherine, had pursued her for 10 years before they got married. Initially, Catherine treated him like a child, but after being wooed for 10 years, she seemed completely won over, and despite complaining, they were living quite happily together. I was very envious of Catherine and Noah's relationship.
Hey, are you ready yet?
Oh, yes, I'm ready.
You're really slow?
I'm sorry.
Damn.
Bob didn't seem to notice Catherine was there. There'd been no conversation with Bob, so I hadn't told him about her coming. Though it couldn't be helped, Catherine was wide-eyed at Bob's behavior. Without showing his face in the living room, Bob headed straight for the door.
Make sure everything is cleaned up.
Bob said that as he left, while I was having tea with Catherine.
What's with that attitude?
It's okay.
No, it's not.
Catherine was angry with me for accepting Bob's behavior as normal, and she decided to help me clean.
Bob's room is a mess.
His room was cluttered. We chatted and laughed while tidying up. Then, Catherine reached for something. Oh, that's... I tried to stop her from opening the drawer without his permission. But before I could, I heard Catherine's surprised voice.
What is this?
What happened? No way. I was speechless when I saw the photo in Catherine's hand. A happy family photo and a filled-out divorce form. That turned me off. Catherine, will you help me?
Of course.
With a strong ally by my side, I began preparing to fight. First, we had to get rid of some things. With that thought, I rolled up my sleeves. Catherine and I packed Bob's things into trash bags. We saved anything that might serve as evidence, including diaries, photos, and letters. Bob looked gently smiling in each photo, just like when we got married. I collected them expressionlessly while Catherine reacted to each one, getting outraged every time.
Hey, let's go to the city hall now.
Yes, let's do that. Catherine suggested mischievously, and I smiled back. Bob had said to make sure everything is cleaned up. Let's clean up this relationship as well. I packed some immediate belongings, disposed of all of Bob's things, and headed to the city hall in Catherine's car. After submitting the divorce form, we went to Catherine's house.
What? Emma?
Sorry to intrude. Noah was initially very surprised, but became even angrier than Catherine after hearing the situation. For someone who has loved only one person for over 10 years, what Bob did was unforgivable.
Emma, you can stay here as long as you need.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I expressed my gratitude to Catherine, and she, in turn, apologized to me. However, Catherine did nothing wrong. On the contrary, she found the evidence and even offered me a place to stay. I was nothing but grateful to Catherine. Bob had said he was going on a business trip for a week starting today. Since there would be no contact, he wouldn't realize I had left the house until a week later. I'll never forgive him. He's going to regret this.
That's the spirit. Noah and I will support you.
Catherine, thank you so much. Thanks to Catherine, I was filled with energy and motivation. That night, I slept soundly and started looking for a lawyer the next day. At the same time, As I was looking for a new place to live, a friend of Catherine's offered me a room at a bargain price. Gratefully, I decided to make that room my base and continued my search for a lawyer. The first, second, and then the third. They were all misses, and I was getting tired. However, on the fourth try, I finally met a wonderful lawyer.
Let's work hard together.
Yes, thank you so much. The lawyer's name was Johnson, a very refreshing man. Honestly, at first, I was disappointed, thinking he was another miss. But you can't judge people by their appearance. He efficiently handled everything from fact-checking to forecasting, making all my requests possible. I discussed with Johnson and sent a certified mail to the person Bob was cheating with. And I left Bob's copy on the living room table. Bob called me 3 days later.
Hey, what is this about?
As soon as I picked up the phone, I heard Bob's angry voice. I responded calmly. It's a certified mail.
So, why am I being asked to pay $50,000 in alimony?
As it says.
This is ridiculous.
Bob complained irritably, and he continued to lash out.
Hey, whose money did you use for this?
Mine?
What? It's the money I earned, right?
No, it's mine. Indeed, while Bob had been providing for living expenses, my income had already become sufficient to support myself. Therefore, the lawyer's fees and all related expenses were paid entirely with my money, including savings I had before. But no matter how much I explained, Bob refused to believe it.
Anyway, you're just a useless woman who can't do anything right. Just stay quiet and do the housework and I'll provide for you. Come back home right now.
So I was being underestimated to that extent. That made my blood boil. I unleashed all my anger at Bob. You're the one who can't live without me. I have my own income sufficient for living. You are unnecessary in my life.
You? How could you say that?
Right when Bob tried to retaliate, the doorbell rang on his end. I couldn't help but smile upon hearing that. Look, someone's there for you.
Damn, who's that at this time? Mom? Dad?
The expected scenario almost made me laugh. However, I held back and spoke to the phone. Olivia, perfect timing.
Emma, thanks for letting us know. We'll take care of this foolish son of ours.
Thank you. I said my thanks and hung up the phone. Both of my in-laws were former teachers, strict about discipline. They're firm with both themselves and others. Bob had always said he was scared of his parents, but to me, they were always kind and wonderful in-laws. There was no way they would forgive Bob's infidelity. A few hours later, Catherine received a message from my Phil, Alex, saying he had given Bob a good talking to and wanted to arrange a meeting.
We'll come with you.
Catherine, really? Thank you. I contacted my own parents and set a date for the meeting. My parents cried when they heard my story, making me feel somehow guilty. Mom, I'm sorry for all this.
What are you talking about? Your happiness is what matters most. Let's cut off this bad relationship quickly.
Right? We need to visit a breakup sanctuary soon.
Maybe I should go too.
I could hear my dad panicking on the other end of the phone at my mom's words. I chuckled and played along with my mom's bad influence. My parents had an arranged marriage, but are enviably close. My positive view of arranged marriages came from seeing how well they got along. It would be unthinkable for my parents to divorce, as if the world turned upside down. Mom, don't be too hard on Dad, okay? I hope our meeting will go well.
Of course, your father is a crybaby. leave the meeting to us.
I could already hear my dad's almost tearful voice over the phone, and I pictured the endearing scene. After some more small talk with my mom, I hung up. On the day of the meeting, since there were many of us, I set it up at my house. That day, my lawyer, Catherine, and her husband, our in-laws, and my parents, a total of 8 people, gathered at my home. We were shocked when we entered. What is this? It's filthy.
Wow, it's like Bob's old room.
My in-laws were speechless at the sight of the messy room. Bob had always been bad at tidying up. But according to Catherine, that was because he had hidden his true self and dumped everything on me afterward. Bob was sitting at the living room table, zoning out. When he noticed us, he started crying and tried to cling to me. When Alex stopped him, Bob started to scream.
Come back, Emma. Without you, I.
Seeing Bob cry pathetically didn't stir any feelings in me. Realizing I no longer loved him, I looked down at him with a smile.
What are you laughing at? Look, this mess is your fault. Where were you slacking off instead of doing housework?
We're already divorced, so I don't intend to do any housework here. Bob's eyes widened at my words. I hadn't yet told Bob about submitting the divorce form. I squatted down in front of him to tell him the truth. You told me to make sure everything was cleaned up. So I did. I cleaned up everything, including your room and our marriage.
So, that's why all my stuff is gone.
Bob was dumbfounded. I smiled and nodded. His face turned red with anger.
Don't joke with me. Who do you think provided for you all this time?
That would be you. I'm grateful for that.
Returning kindness with betrayal. I see.
Oh, I thought I was repaying you with housework. Every time I retorted, Bob seemed to get so angry, I thought his veins would burst. Then, Bob raised his hand to hit me. However, it wasn't me who ended up flying, but Bob.
What?
Bob was holding his cheek in pain, dumbfounded. The one glaring at him, while panting, was, shockingly, Olivia.
I knew you were a bit insensitive to others' feelings, but I never imagined it would go this far. What you did is unforgivable.
Mom.
Olivia was teary-eyed as she glared at Bob. Then she turned to me and my parents and apologized to us.
I'm terribly sorry for the unforgivable actions of our foolish son that hurt Emma. I deeply apologize.
Olivia, it's not your fault. You've done nothing wrong. My mom and I hurried to lift her up. She kept apologizing while crying. Watching his mother like this, Bob seemed to finally realize the gravity of his actions. Just as Bob began to speak, the doorbell rang at the perfect time. I went to the door with a smile to greet the guests. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Sorry for being late.
No, you're right on time. Please excuse the mess. I led the guests into the living room. Bob's eyes widened when he saw the guests.
Me. Michelle.
Bob. The woman called Michelle awkwardly mentioned the name Bob.
I'm sorry for the late introduction. My name is Tom Miller. This is my wife, Michelle.
Michelle here. I'm so sorry for this.
Michelle started crying mid-sentence. She looked just like the woman Bob had been photographed with. I smiled at her and encouraged her to continue. Let's start with how you two met.
Well, it was at a reunion.
An ex-girlfriend, right? You met again and rekindled things.
I'm so sorry. I didn't know he was married.
Michelle's words made me burst into laughter. She was completely frightened by my laughter. I decided to explain the reason for my laughter carefully. Here, this is a copy of the account I found. This is your account, right?
How did you get this?
Why post your face if not to be noticed? Were you hoping I would see it? I pointed to a line. There was an update saying, "Could his wife please look here?" which proved that everything Michelle had said earlier was a lie.
You said you didn't know he was married and accidentally cheated. Lying again.
But, if I didn't say that, I'd be sued for alimony.
Exactly.
Michelle's husband glared at her, saying that. Amidst this, Johnson spoke up.
Let's proceed with the discussion. First, we've demanded $40,000 in damages from Michelle and $50,000 from Bob. You both agree with this, right?
I'm billing each of you $30,000.
Bob and Michelle quickly shook their heads in refusal at Johnson's words. Then, Bob began to speak in a feeble voice.
There's no way we can pay $150,000 for raising children together.
Right? In this era of low birth rate, you need to be kinder to those with children.
Michelle piggybacked on Bob's claim, but her husband looked at her coldly. Only Johnson and I, who had been briefed on the situation, knew why.
How dare you say such blatant lies?
What do you mean?
Michelle still tried to hide the truth. Olivia, looking straight at Michelle, confirmed her suspicion.
The child in the photo isn't Bob's, is it?
Why would you say that? I mean, that child is Bob's.
Oh really? That's strange.
What's strange about it?
Olivia chuckled. Confused by her laughter, Michelle urged her to continue, with a slightly irritated voice.
Bob can't have children.
What?
Bob should have been informed about this.
What do you mean?
That's what it means.
Michelle slumped down upon hearing Olivia's words. Bob also looked surprised, apparently having completely forgotten. Despite it being about his own body, he had been quite forgetful. I had heard before getting married that Bob was infertile. The call came from Olivia before I responded to the matchmaking proposal. I was told that, though fertility treatments could improve chances, they weren't guaranteed, so I agreed to marry. We then decided together not to have children. However, Bob was so thrilled about the affair child that he forgot all about it.
Why didn't you tell me?
I forgot.
How can you forget something so important?
Michelle screamed. Her husband interrupted her calmly.
So, the child isn't Bob's, and it isn't mine either. I was on a long overseas business trip, and when I returned, suddenly there was a child. It was a real horror experience.
Everyone was chilled by her husband's story. The timing of the child's birth didn't match the last time Michelle's husband was home. And upon investigation, we discovered who the father was. But we also uncovered some more shocking facts.
The child's father was another man. Furthermore, Michelle had accumulated gambling debts with that man, amounting to about $50,000.
You investigated. That's the lowest.
I'll return those exact words to you.
Michelle's husband remained calm in the face of her hysterics. Bob was gaping at it, clearly shocked. He probably never imagined there was another person involved besides him. As the situation spiraled, Catherine, who had been quiet, spoke up.
Bob and that woman are the worst. What do you think you're doing to my dear Emma? I will never forgive you both.
Wait, Catherine.
Bob, who had always adored Catherine, was speechless, being called the worst by her. Michelle, on the other hand, glared at her with hostility.
This has nothing to do with you.
Being her Sil doesn't directly involve me, true, but seeing my dear Sil hurt fills me with rage.
Whatever. You'll probably get cheated on too.
Michelle's words momentarily silenced Catherine. Then, Catherine's husband, with a gentle smile, spoke up.
Do you understand the feelings I've harbored for 10 years? I spent a decade winning my wife's heart. Don't lump my beloved wife with women who change their minds and betray so easily.
What?
Though his tone was quiet and gentle, I could definitely sense anger coming from Noah. Michelle became flustered and couldn't argue back. During that time, Johnson laid out documents on the table. It was a consent form for the alimony to me and Michelle's husband. Bob, with a defeated look, signed them.
You're not going to divorce me, are you?
What? Of course, I am. Don't worry, I'll make sure the paternity dispute is settled in court, too.
But that child is yours.
What are you talking about? We've done a DNA test.
Faced with an irrefutable smile, Michelle signed the document with a pale face. Well, whether you two decide to marry or separate after this doesn't concern me. This house will be put up for sale next week. Bob, you need to move out by then.
Emma, wait, Emma.
Ignoring Bob's calls, I left the house I had grown accustomed to. Back in my new home, Catherine, her husband, and I opened some fine wine and celebrated the night away. Later, I heard from Michelle's husband that Bob and Michelle had separated. After we left, the two apparently got into a physical fight. Michelle got divorced and returned to her parents' house, losing custody of the child and being sent to work in a live-in job. In a female-dominated workplace, her affair was exposed, leading her to be ostracized. While I feel slightly sorry for her, she's making monthly alimony payments, so I hope her job continues. Michelle's husband seemed a bit down, but remarried quickly thanks to his high specs. It seemed like his new wife would accompany him for his overseas business trip. I only said, I wish you happiness, and then we haven't been in touch since. Bob was disowned by his family and fired from his civil servant job. The reason was simple. He had been having an affair during work hours. After the child was born, he claimed to be working from home, but apparently spent most days at Michelle's house, hardly working. It's beyond appalling. Now, without any prior work experience outside of civil service, Bob struggles to keep a job and is currently doing construction work. The reason I knew this was because my lawyer, Johnson, often received calls from him complaining and crying. In fact, Michelle agreed to pay the alimony in installments, but Bob was forced to pay in full as we knew he would be disowned. Naive Bob seems to have borrowed from dubious sources, and as the repayment amount kept rising, he desperately wanted the alimony back, proposing to repay it in installments afterward. Of course, Johnson refused, and Bob is now working day and night to repay his debts. My in-laws started living with Catherine's family. Apparently, it was Noah's idea, and my in-laws were really happy, laughing joyfully. They bought a house to live together as four, now next to mine, in a multi-generational home. I enjoy dinner with them weekly and outings with Catherine, maintaining a wonderful relationship. My in-laws initially felt guilty towards me, but I've always loved them and assured them they weren't to blame, bringing us closer than ever. Olivia and I share a love for tea, often going out for lunch together. Catherine and Olivia jokingly fight over me, which has become a routine occurrence. By the way, I recently remarried. My partner is my former lawyer, Johnson. After the case was over, we kept in touch, and he asked me out. Since I didn't feel bad about it, I agreed to start dating, and we got married on our 3rd anniversary last month. Actually, I'm also expecting a child next year. And coincidentally, Catherine is pregnant too. We're looking forward to being mom friends.
Is that a boy or girl inside your tummy?
It's a boy. What about you, Catherine?
I'm having a girl. Think they'll get married in the future.
Who knows? After our checkup, Catherine and I had such conversations on our way back from the gynecologist. At home, our husbands were waiting, visibly anxious and restless. Catherine and I exchanged looks and laughed at the sight of them. Surrounded by caring husbands and a trustworthy friend, I felt immensely happy. Oh, it moved.
What? Let me feel. It's not moving now.
That's funny.
Hey, what's so funny?
Nothing. I wish for these peaceful days to last forever. With just 3 months until the birth, I am eagerly looking forward to meeting my child, my heart pounding with excitement.